All right. What we have here are some of the larger items in my collection. I'm gonna just go over, talk about a little bit. Um, Up here we have the gut shot of a kicker ZR1000. Here we have a gut shot of a PPI PC 2350, and here we have a C18A 8 ohm monster subwoofer. Completely different um, design than the other comps. This one's it's an absolute beast of a subwoofer. They didn't really change a lot from the separates, which had the dust cap with the gold lettering. I've seen the back of those; they look identical to me. I think other than the dust cap and then the sticker on the back of the magnet, I don't know really what would be different on this. What I don't think they changed anything. And there's a couple features that I wanted to point out that when I got it, I was kind of surprised by. Didn't know that it had. But anyway, um, we'll start here with the Kicker ZR1000. And let's do a comparison now that I have them side by side. Um, you can see they both have um, massive windings on the toroid. Um, here, look, I mean, just look at all that copper right there. I mean, just put a comparison. I mean, it's probably, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what will be. It's there. This one looks bigger. It's a little bit different how they wound it. This is several little strands of wire, and this is a fatter gauge wire, but just beastly amplifiers. Yeah, so we'll grab the ZR1000 first. Now, this board has a lot of empty space on it, but this amp had to be this large because you can see the transistors and rectifiers, which will be right there. They take up the entirety of the length of this heatsink, so it has to be this big. So it's not like they just spaced everything out on a PCB to elongate the amplifier. It kind of has to be this large. One thing I wanted to point out that I haven't heard anybody really talk about, but I've had a lot of experience with ZR amps. The only issue that I'm aware of that you will run into frequently with these is with the module docking port. This right here, I don't know if it's in there is where it makes contact top and bottom and pinches onto the different crossover cards that you'll insert. Whether those pins lose their ability to contact, they just get weak, or if this thing gets like, it's pretty sturdy in there, so I don't think it's getting moved back. But I've had lots of problems. Here the zero, they'll still run, but it'll run at like half power, and then you wiggle this, and all of a sudden it'll kick in again. My buddy had a ZR240 that he was running just recently, and he said, "Man, it just seems to be kicking out." Well, my old ZR1000, I used to have the same issue, and I said, "Well, wiggle the crossover card," and sure enough, that's what it was. So these can be an issue. Other than that, these are rock solid amplifiers. It doesn't seem like it's attached that well, but you can see they put just wads of glue under there. It's not the prettiest board. It's actually rather simple, but the sound of a ZR is just they're amazing on subwoofers. And actually, I ran a. I'm trying to think what the designation is. I think it's a ZX460. It's a 4-channel version, and I ran that on interiors, and I was seriously impressed with it. It was a really, really good interior sounding amp. I only replaced it when I happened to get a really good deal on a PC4100, and I do like the sound of PC4100 over the ZX4. I think it's a ZX460. But that's basically two ZR120s in the same chassis. But yeah, I mean, you can just see just a huge bank of caps here. 100, and they use quality ones. 105-degree capacitors all around. Even the ones back here, these are all 105. So you're going to see longevity with these caps. I mean, they're getting old though, so I mean, I don't know how much longer they'll be fine to run with these. They're made in Japan. They're not Chinese caps. I'm not familiar with the brand. They're not Nishikon, but yeah, you can just see that they glued everything down. What you want, you don't want anything like this moving around, because if you're vibrating, I mean, I never attach an amp to a box, but you're still going to get vibrations in the vehicle. And if you get vibrations and you get something heavy like this wiggling back and forth, it'll break these contacts. The weld will break. But yeah, so they glued the heck out of these things. You can see all the caps are epoxied, which that's going to be fun replacing those. These ones back here aren't. They're epoxied to each other, so like the strength you can see in between them. So, you know, I think that's its strength, is all those legs are together. I mean, everything is one big chunk and the two banks of four. See the size of them if I can see a. I'm not seeing the. It's 1200 microfarad, and then these ones back here, 3900 microfarad, 16 volt. These are 63 volt. Yeah, just a lot of caps. No, like they're not like rather large, but I don't really know how that works with capacitors, because sometimes you'll see large values, but in a small package. So I don't really know how that works, how that all shakes out. But this amp was mint condition when I bought it, and I get it in the mail, and they had just thrown it into a USPS, like one of those flat rate boxes, and without any packing materials. So it snapped off a foot, which you'll see a lot of ZRs with it snapped off, because these are not extruded aluminum. You can see how rough that is. These are an aluminum casting, and that's why they're kind of brittle. You'll see a lot of feet busted off in the ZR series. This one wasn't when I bought it, but it broke in shipping. But yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. This is one of my favorite amplifiers. I ran one for a real long time. I've run ZR600s, the ZX460, 240s. I haven't really run a 360. I have a 360, but then I bought it, and I unfortunately didn't test it when I bought it, and brought it home, and it didn't work. But I didn't pay a lot for it anyway, so it wasn't a huge deal. Anyway, I'll put this away. Now we'll look at what I currently run. And this is a PC2350, and these this is the one that's been burnt up twice, and I'll show you what a horrible job they did repairing it the first time and why it's wrong. I'm not an amp tech, and I knew immediately when I got this that they just did a horrible job repairing it. Now what you can see is all this, where it's all burnt right there, and you got all that carbon on there. If the amp tech doesn't remove that, and it doesn't even look like they attempted to remove it, because this isn't burnt the second time, because you can see transistors are fine. I mean, I don't know if they would like meter out correct, but they didn't explode. It was the previous ones in here. They replaced them with these and never removed that. Well, that carbon's conductive, so you're going to get shorts across all kinds of areas. So it's no surprise to me this amplifier failed again. Another thing this amp tech did is they wedged in hot glue, and then these little pads in between the thick copper bus bars. That's completely unnecessary. These, I don't know. I mean, every other PC series I have, you open it up, or the plexiglass ones I have, they're close together like that. As long as they're not touching, which they won't, these don't bend or flex at all. This is solid copper. You know, I can sit here and reef on it. That isn't going anywhere. So I don't know why they just didn't feel comfortable with it or what. There's no reason to do that. And if you open up a regular 2350, you won't see that. So this is a, I mean, it's a good example to see how it is, but they're even cleaner normally inside. Let's see. Oh, one thing I wanted to show was the 2350. When you see the board, I was talking earlier on the Orions that I wish they would have kind of screwed down, you know, in the middle of the PCB, so it was kind of, it wasn't going to vibrate, the middle wasn't going to flex, because you want everything to be as still as possible. And look what PPI did here. So they got it screwed at the edges, the corners, right there, and they use really nice fasteners too. These button head machine screws. Then you go to the center. There's one. There's another. There's another. There's another. This board isn't going to flex. It isn't going to move. It's rock solid in here. So, you know, it's things like that that you can see that they've put together a quality product. Oh, and then too, I was talking about how on the plexiglass bottom ones, they have those big stainless steel rails, or they could be aluminum, on the edge, screwed down, clamping the FETs. Normally, it's the back plate. This is the back plate to the amp, and you can see it's when you screw down the back plate, this is what clamps the FETs to the heat sink to transfer the heat. And then PPI amps, this one was redone, and they probably, when they replaced FETs, they probably replaced the thermal paste. You'll still see this in a brand new one. PPI must have had stock in the thermal paste company, because their amps are, every time you crack one open, it's just loaded with this thermal paste. So even though this is redone, this is what it would look like in by any rate. Like, actually, this you can tell the newer stuff's a little bit softer. This is original, so this is what it would have looked like from the factory. They just cake on the thermal paste. They use, like with all their Power Class and Art Series amps, Nishikon capacitors throughout. I'm trying to get a value on these. They're 85 Celsius. Having a hard time finding a value on these. 2200 microfarad, 16 volt, and there's just a ton of them here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 24 of those on the back, and then 2 up here. These are all 85 degree, and those are 108 volt. Is that right? No, that can't be. I don't know. I'm having a hard time seeing what the value is on those. Anyway, these bigger ones, I want to see what those are. Those are 2200, 63 volt. And I'm trying to get a temp on those. Those don't appear to be Nishikon, and those could have been replaced too when they serviced this amp. It also had a failure here, and you can see they laid in a small piece of wire. A trace must have burned right off the board, but you can see they didn't even attempt to remove the carbon from the PCB, you know, after they take out the bad components, to go ahead and, you know, put in new ones. I mean, it's conductive, so you're setting up for failure, and there's just flux all over this. They just left the flux right in there. I mean, this is really sloppy repair work. I mean, it's about as bad as you'll see. I mean, I'm not an amp tech, and I know that these are just horrible mistakes by whoever did this. Um, I think that's about it. What I saw for damage. Other interesting things on the board, like PPI does. Um, they got their made in the USA, Phoenix, Arizona. Got the PPI logo. They got the American flag. They put that on there. I think it's on all of their boards until the later PCs. The light gray ones, which I think are, I don't know, you painted that color and it just did not look nearly as nice. And those were made in Korea, a lot of them, and you could tell because right on the amp originally it says designed and handcrafted in the USA. I believe it also says it, yeah, on the end plate, designed and handcrafted in the USA. If you get one of those, it'll just have their company slogan, which is state of the art, and I think it says even like it might say like engineered in the U.S. Absolutely state of the art or something like that, which was their it was absolutely state of the art mobile audio. It was their slogan. Okay, so one thing I wanted to show that I didn't go over with the power class was to show their crossover and the Cubase and all that. So we'll look at the end of one of these amps. The remote turn on is always on this side, as well as the speaker connections. This is actually in there upside down. It can go in. It's kind of ambidextrous, but they had the Molex plug, which some people really don't care for. I don't mind them. I actually kind of like them because I buy a lot of PC class, so when I go to test them, I already run a couple in my Suburban, so I just disconnect the battery, I unplug it, plug theirs in, and then reconnect the battery, and I can tell, if I got a working amplifier or not immediately. So it's actually come in handy quite a few times for me. Yeah, that's how it should be right there. Right here, I got thermal paste all over. Whenever you crack one of these amps open, you're going to get thermal paste everywhere. So this Q select, what that is that's just with these Q-based buttons, you select your frequency. So depending on the combination, if you have one out and two in, it's like, maybe, let's say 80 hertz, it'll boost at 80. If you push it in, it's like, if you both are in, it's like 66 hertz. If two's out, I think it might be 40. I don't know. I have to get the manual out, but depending on what combination of these buttons, if they're both out, it's a different one. So whatever you push them into, that'll select your frequency, which is kind of odd. A lot of them you'll see now will just have a little potentiometer, and you just dial it into whatever hertz you want to boost. I don't use a lot of bass boost. I think that mine's set in the Suburban at a really high hertz, like 80. It's like 66 or 80, and it's just because I only use it for like rock, like for kick drum and whatnot. And 2 and 4 is how wide of the spectrum it'll boost. So I think if it's 2, it's less, so it'll just boost like really near 60, and if you have 4, it'll boost a much wider section. Then there's the crossover, high pass, low pass, and like I said, with this amp, whatever you put, so if you put a full signal into it, it doesn't matter. With this, the 2150, the 2100, all of those, all it is high pass, low pass. So I think it goes 90 hertz and up or 90 hertz and down, and so you can't run this on full range. Because what I would have liked to done, because I have that Hyphonics crossover, I use it for my my interiors, but for the sub, I mean, I can go up to 90. I can dial it down from 90, but I can't go higher. I actually like to set, generally on my subs, I like to set it at 100. it depends. The 18s, 90 actually works pretty good, but when I was running the PPI Pro, the flat pistons, they do really well higher up. So I would set um, other amplifiers when they were hooked up to it to 100, and it sounded really good. But so yeah, there's your inputs and your outputs. So if you select low pass, these outputs will automatically be high pass, and vice versa. If it's high pass, these will be low pass automatically. I don't know. I don't understand why they would do that. Everybody else, whatever you put in here, you're gonna get out here, and it works. It works fine. Like, so what if you wanted to daisy chain, let's say, 10 of these together? You can't. You really can't do it. You'd have to find another way to go about getting your signal. You can't just, like the ZR1000, you can just daisy chain one right after another. I know there's a limit on it, but I mean it's more than you would hook up. You can daisy chain several of them to them, so it would just be like, whatever signal you put in here, you're gonna get out here, and then you can just keep going on down the line. You can't do that with the power class. I don't really understand that. Another thing that I forgot to mention is these were the amplifiers that Elma Gates used in the Bronco in '97 to set the world record, and it was a monstrous number. It was in the 170s. I want to say it was 173, but don't quote me on that. I haven't looked at it in a long time. But it was, she was running, actually, they were modified. I've seen online there's a guy on, I think it's Steve Mead's forum, and he had bought one, and he opened it up, and there was some modifications to it, and it looks like it was designed to run at a lower ohm, like they were running at 2 ohms, which makes sense because she was running 32 of the 2350s hooked up to 64 of the 4 ohm 10-inch PPI Pro flat pistons. So if you hook 2 up to each one of these, you're going to get a 2 ohm load. So they had done some things to the board so that it ran stable at a 2 ohm. And then too, I'm going to show real quick the 4100 end plate, because that one's kind of different. And then I'll show the other side of these amps, because they're the same throughout the entire line until you get down to like the 225. The smaller of the amps look a little different because they don't have a Cubase. They're Cubase. They don't have a remote. This one is missing the it's hard to find 4-pin or 4-pin Molex plug, which, I mean, I don't know, I could probably find like a clapped out 450 and that'll have one on it, which is probably what I'll end up doing. But in this one, it's same, like for the front, you can actually run that full range. On this amplifier, you can do that. But you can also push in, there's a button on here. Yeah, front high pass, or this will just be your high pass setting. And what these were is these were detented. So you get the manual, and at one click, it'll be, let's say 22 hertz, and then another, and you can feel the clicks. They're very slight, so you got to use a really light screwdriver. I used to use I have this little tiny screwdriver that I use to set my gains, so that you can actually feel those detents, and then you can just count and go by the manual and go, I want it at, I want a high pass at 80 hertz or 70 or whatever you want to do, and then look in the book where that is, and then count those off, and then you're set, which is really nice. These have a really nice crossover built in. They got the same thing, the Cubase, and it runs the same way. The rear, however, you could do high pass or low pass, so that way you can use the rear 2 channels as for a sub, which I've done on this amp, and it works really well. Now with the Hyphonics crossover, I'm able to adjust the level of my subs a little bit better than I could off of the Alpine deck or the Eclipse deck, because they both have sub control on them. But when I was using this amp, everything is matched so well that it's you know it's perfect. The subs blend really well with your interiors. It was probably running with this was one of the better sounding systems I've had in the Suburban. I was just running this for a while, but you know, you're limited. I mean, it's 800 watts, so you know, I just kind of I wanted something like with a little more power. Especially after I bought the JLs, I had 400 watts isn't really going to get the job done, so I switched up to 2 amplifier system. But it did. I ran the 15-inch kicker comps with the Lanzar fronts and those JL rears, and it sounded really good when it was all hooked up to this amp. I can't say enough about the 4100. It's my favorite 4-channel amp. But that's about it. Oh, I didn't go over the end plate. So what you have here is if you don't have that bass knob, your 0 to 18 dB bass boost is right here. You know, the settings are on that side for selecting the frequency, and then this is the, you know, the amount of boost you want to add. Here's the port for the Cubase remote, and then here's your positive negative. I don't know if the lighting's good enough, but yeah, so, and you can see it's only 4 gauge. So I've got aught gauge running to the distribution block, and then just a very, like, my run's only maybe 8 inches of 4 gauge going from the distribution block to the amp. And in my experience, as long as if you're running a small gauge to your amp and it's going to draw a lot of power, as long as that run is really short, you're not going to be missing out on much. Another thing too is with these amps, they're not real power. Like the 2350 uses a lot of power, but its voltage isn't extremely critical. You want to keep it north of 12 volts. Other than that, it's going to give you all its power from 12 to 16. So, which the ZR1000 is not. It's completely unregulated, and I can show you that one too. Is only got 4 gauge 4 gauge inputs on it, which is unfortunate because this amp needs a lot more than that. So there's your remote, your ground, 12 volt, but they're solid, just chunks of gold plated. I think it's brass, but I'm not for sure. And then your speakers, you're limited to 8 gauge on those. So now I want to just go real quick over this Kicker Comp 18. I have never run these, so I've never even heard one in action. This one, but when I went to pick it up, the guy had it in like a OSB box that it was horrible. So it was a Craigslist thing, and I picked it up down to Detroit, and I pulled out. I left his place, and he was in a big, huge apartment complex thing. And I pulled up to the first dumpster I could and pulled it out of the box and threw that box in the dumpster. He was supposed to sell me 2. I get down there, he only had 1. But I think I paid like $150, so I bought the one anyway and figured I'd pick up another one when I could. The Rubitex gasket was completely destroyed, so I pulled that off, and I bought one online, a kit, and it came out really nice. Like I don't know if you redo your own subs, you know, finding a surround, you know, a foam surround, you can usually find something that's pretty darn close to OEM. But other than 18-inch, and I think maybe 15-inch, you might be able to get the proper gasket. But for 12s, they're only 3/8, so you always have a gap. You might have seen on that stroker. That was another thing they had added a. Um, it was just a uh, paper, like a black paper gasket, and it looked horrible. So I pulled that off and I put the Rubatex, but it's only 3/8 thick, and I called all over, and they said nobody makes 1/2 inch Rubatex gasket anymore. So, which is just the fake cork, but it looks so much nicer than that paper gasket. Um, then I actually got the sets of the extra ones here because I used one of the 18s for this, and then there is another one, and then I'm gonna end up doing the JLs because they have those paper gaskets because you can't get the JL. Their original gaskets look like a leather, and they're just not available anymore. So I figured Rubatex would look a lot better than that. There's that black paper. But here's the 12-inch. It's only 3/8. It's not a good size. So on like a kick or comp or whatever, if you're redoing it, a lot of the the C18 or the C12As, usually the Rubatex will be fine, but the C12Cs generally it's peeling off, and the C12Ds are notorious. They're always, you're almost always when you buy them, it's going to be just peeling right apart. They must have just been faulty. But another thing, oh, this thing's a beast. That I found really interesting, if I can get enough light to show it, is there's like a gasket. Let me go and get some more light here. There's a gasket on the Spider. I've never seen that on any other sub, and I don't get what that's about. And it was the same thing on the Separates 18, and the C18C has got that gasket as well. It's just really weird design, and it's got the boot around the magnet slug, and it's only a single slug. It's a beefy one. It's huge. It's got a vented pole. This one's missing. I believe it's missing. I'm thinking there's supposed to be some sort of mesh in there to keep particles from getting in there, but I don't think it's in this one. Yeah, you can see it's a C18A 8 ohm. I mean, I was able to hook it up and run it for a minute in that really crappy box to confirm that it was working. But yeah, they're just a beefy subwoofer. The the JL has the JL18s have a double slug, but they're probably way about the same. You're probably getting as much magnet. It's just doubled up, and they're smaller around, whereas this one's, oh, it's a single slug, but it's just like the strokers. They only had a single slug, but it was huge in diameter. So and then these, I don't know. I don't want to throw out numbers, but I know that I want to say it's 3 to 3.5 cubic feet, whereas the JLs require right in the manual. They say do not run them ported. They don't recommend it, and it was due to the sub being able to maintain linearity in the magnet gap running them ported. The kickers, I believe in the manual you can run these ported. It's huge box. I want to say that's over 4 cubic feet is what they require if you're going to run them ported. But if you run them sealed, I want to say it's 3, 3.25, 3.5. It's a huge box that's needed for these. So another thing on the JLs, I do have them sealed in the 1 3/4. That box is made exactly to the dimensions they called for. They said use 3/4, make the outside dimensions this size, and it'll be perfect. Well, I did that, and then I put them in, and they they hit pretty good. But I was like, you know what? That small of a volume, I'm gonna go ahead and polyfill that and see what kind of results I get. And putting in quite a bit of polyfill. The more I put in there, the better they sounded, the louder they got. So there's quite a bit of polyfill in there. I don't want to choke them out, but the more I added, the better they sounded. So there's quite a bit of polyfill in that box. And so, I mean, yeah, you can make a really small box, but I would definitely recommend putting quite a bit of polyfill in there. Well, that's all I have for now.